and did a tremendous job in bringing it home for us in Bournemouth. 55-45. I believe I'd like to introduce Conor Burns MP.
Thank you, Lawrence. And what an incredible couple of weeks we have just had. You sometimes see on the news when there's been a particular weather event, and there's been a lot of rainfall, and the reporters will tell you that 3 months rainfall fell in an afternoon. I have felt in the last couple of weeks that we've had about 2 years worth of news happening in just 2 weeks. It was probably best summed up to me in a tweet that the excellent Isabel Hardman of The Spectator sent out one afternoon next week, and she said, frankly, if the 5 horsemen of the apocalypse trotted through Portcullis House in Westminster, I would neither have time to look or to write about it. It has been an extraordinary period, and of course triggered by a wonderful event with the British people voting to leave the European Union. I used the quote often during that campaign of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, where he said to the American people, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself." It's not often that it goes on to use the rest of the quote, but the quote goes on to say that fear paralyzes needed action. That is very true. But the quote that I think is appropriate for what we have just lived through is from the president, one of the presidents before Roosevelt of the same name, who said, "Far better it is to dare mighty deeds, even though tempered by failure, than to live in that perpetual twilight zone that knows neither victory nor defeat." My friends, we dared the mightiest of deeds, and we won. And it is worth just remembering what we were up against. The might of the establishment, both domestically and internationally. I could sound like the Prime Minister, the outgoing Prime Minister in a moment, if I say the CBI, the TUC, the IOD, the IMF, Christine Lagarde, President Obama, President Hollande, Chancellor Merkel. They all lined up to tell us that it would be disastrous for our country, for us again to become a self-governing democracy. And the British people, in their quiet wisdom, went into those polling stations in their millions, and they said, "We, the British people, we who love Britain, know better than all of you what is right for our country and for the destiny of our country." They sent a message in the clearest of terms that Britain's best days don't lie behind us in pages of our history books already written. Our best days lie ahead of us in pages yet to be written, and they stood up to be counted and said that they want to be part of writing the next chapter in our island's glorious history. And we hear now complaints that we were not truthful, that some of the things that we said aren't now going to happen, apparently. My friends, we promised the British people that if they voted to leave the European Union, we would take back control of our democracy, and that is exactly what we are going to do. And on the subject of things that were threatened, that were going to happen, where is the emergency budget that was going to raise taxes and dramatically cut spending the week after Britain voted to leave the European Union? Well, I sat behind the Chancellor of the Exchequer this week in the House of Commons as a member of the Treasury team, and the Chancellor stood up not to announce an emergency budget with massive tax hikes and spending cuts. He stood up to announce that we were going to reduce the rate of corporation tax, to have one of the most competitive rates of corporation tax anywhere within the European Union, to act as a magnet for inward investment into our country. We were told that the rest of the world would turn their backs on us. And yet last week, the Prime Ministers of Australia and New Zealand, in a joint statement, said they want to begin immediately opening talks for us to have a bilateral trade agreement. President Obama came over to tell us we would be at the back of the queue. And the Speaker of the House of Representatives in Washington last week said the United Kingdom would be at the front of the queue in a deal with the United States. We were told we couldn't do a deal with India. Well, where this weekend is Sajid Javid, the business secretary? He's in Mumbai talking to the Indian government about a bilateral trade agreement. My friends, the early signs are profoundly optimistic about what we can achieve outside the European Union. But I say this to all of you, because the journey that we are now embarked on is not going to be an easy one, and there will be bumps in the road. But it is interesting now to note that every significant figure in British politics has said that the result is binding. Theresa May this week at the hustings in the House of Commons in front of my colleagues began her remarks by saying Brexit means Brexit. And we have to be sensitive and sympathetic to those of our fellow countrymen who, for honourable reasons, voted the other way. We of course have to be sympathetic to their worries, and we have to prove to them that the process of Brexit represents an optimistic future for our country, an internationalist future for our country, as we showed again today at NATO, where the Prime Minister announced that we will renew our independent nuclear deterrent with a vote in the House of Commons before the summer recess. This is not the United Kingdom turning its back on the European Union. This is the United Kingdom turning our eyes again to the horizons of the international community, trading with the world, friends with all. Of course, the continuing members of the European Union are going to be our friends. They're going to be our allies. They're going to be our trading partners. But we will now engage with them on an intergovernmental basis as a self-governing democratic country. T.S. Eliot wrote in that lovely poem of his, what we call the beginning is often the end. And to make an end is to make a beginning. The end is where we start from. I passionately believe that the ending of our relationship with the European Union marks the beginning of a bright, prosperous, internationalist future for our country. And we can all be incredibly proud of the role that each and every one of us played when we stood up to that alliance of people who told us that they would crush us and that they would prevail. For we, my friends, have prevailed. We have chosen the rugged grandeur of liberty over the ignoble ease of the status quo. I want to end by quoting from one of Kipling's famous verses. He wrote, "When the whole world is asleep and there seems no hope of waking, out of some long bad dream that makes them mutter and moan, all men arise to the noise of fetters breaking, and everyone smiles at his neighbour and tells him his soul is his own." My friends, together with all our comrades the length and breadth of this country who believe passionately in our country, in our joint endeavour, we work to break those fetters of the European Union. And in pride and gratitude, we can look to the people of our country in thanks, for through their collective efforts and your incredible hard work, we have today the prospect of getting our country back. Thank you very much indeed.